we firmly believe that forewarned is forearmed. Today, we invite you to take a journey with us into the future. The realities that we'll be discussing today may somewhat be harsh and sometimes unsettling. For example, I just heard last week that almost 1.5 million children have lost their main caregiver as a result of COVID. That is extremely unsettling. But today we hope to give you a full view of what to expect so that you leave today's session feeling empowered with the knowledge and skills to choose the best path for your future success. We want to be able to put the power of the future back in your hands. It takes me back to a story that I heard not so long ago about a guy who goes to his doctor and says, "Doctor, my girlfriend has just found out that she's pregnant, but I don't understand this, doctor. Please explain it to me. I've used every possible way to protect myself and her from this eventuality. Can you tell me what's wrong with me?" And the doctor says, "Well, let's think about this for a minute. I'll tell you a little bit of story about one day when I went hunting. So whilst I was out hunting, I accidentally bumped into a lion. But what happened was, instead of grabbing my rifle, I grabbed an umbrella and tried to defend myself. But instantly, the lion fell down." And the guy says, "But that's impossible. Somebody else must have shot the lion." And the doctor says, "Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. There is the power in the power of knowing." So welcome to the power of knowing. I think before we kickstart, I thought I would start by telling you a little bit about ASI. For those of you who are having a first encounter with us today, we are a proudly South African BE Level 1 organization. We offer independent financial advice. We are firmly grounded in the South African unique context with the vision of creating multi-generational wealth. And this we do through ensuring the financial literacy education and giving back to communities in need. ASI is one of the few organizations I know that measures its success in staying true to that passion, and it's not necessarily always in the rands and cents. We also offer a full suite of advisory services in health, wellness, insurance, investment for private companies and public sector organizations that want to achieve the best possible outcome for their employees. With that view in mind, our actuarial advisory team offers solution-driven analyses and strategies for employee benefits and investment portfolios, helping businesses manage employee as well as business liability risk. We hope to equip you with that toolkit to manage these risks in the power of knowing. As financial advisors, we are expected to manage what was once considered to be futuristic insurance dilemmas, such as cybercrime and business interruption risks. We also know that retirement fund savings are diminishing to such an extent that we are being asked whether there's still a role for traditional employee benefits and insurance in the future, and what does that look like? Is leadership ready to deal with the increased cost of capital risk associated with the loss of lives and the increase in mental illness as a result of COVID? Are you ready to deal with the future workplace? These are some of the questions that we'll be unpacking today, together with our esteemed panel of experts. I'd like to now take the opportunity to introduce you to our panel facilitator, Lesego Gampe, who through delivering real transformation and value through world-class servicing of his clients in the public sector, is driving his purpose as a solution-driven leader. Today, Lesego is representing you, and in his facilitation of the panel, will ensure that he becomes the voice of the audience. So let me welcome Lesego.
Well, thank you, Fazlin, and good afternoon to all our guests. I'm encouraged that so many of you could join us this afternoon as we tackle this pressing issue of what stands before us. a future of uncertainty amidst an undercurrent of troubling circumstances. We've seen the ripple effects of COVID and the recent instability in the country, and today we want to equip you with more knowledge to help you chart a course and navigate the risks. It was Pliny the Elder who said, "In these matters, the only certainty is that nothing is certain." He also said, "There's always something new out of Africa," and I'm sure our experts panel will prove the latter and alleviate some of uncertainty as they answer some pertinent questions. We invite you to join the conversation and post your questions on the chat box via the live stream, and we will get to as many of those possible in the Q&A session. Now, without further ado, I'm humbled to welcome our esteemed panel. First up, we have Nasima Ephraim, a well-respected and credible voice with 17 years experience in the healthcare industry. Nasima has guided multinational clients on their health and wellness strategies in Africa and around the globe. We'll also be joined by Vusi Maswili, renowned for his thought leadership in the retirement fund and group risk advisory space. Vusi passionately shares his knowledge on how South Africans can optimize their savings to retire comfortably. Last, but certainly not least, we'll be joined by Bredzin, an internationally experienced and trusted expert in the short-term insurance industry. Brett is driven by insights and analytics. He has built rapport, changed mindsets, and inspired pioneers in this industry. Welcome to our panel. We'll be taking some questions with us over the next 30 minutes. Let's kick off with establishing the lay of the land and the current situation. I'd like to start with you, Nasima. We know that COVID has deeply affected people physically. However, we have also seen its toll on our mental well-being. Could you share your insights around this topic?
Sure, thank you for the question, Luseko. I think we know that this pandemic has already induced both short and long-term effects onto one's mental health, especially for those already living with existing conditions and those at risk and those who have not yet been diagnosed with a particular mental condition. Now, one must understand that COVID-19's greatest threat is to one's physical health, but due to the risk that this virus poses in spreading, there has been many measures that our government has taken to ensure that they reduce the spread of the virus. And these are things like examples of our lockdown and our varied levels of restrictions. And we have seen with lockdown and with these restrictions, how it has affected our economy, our social life, as well as the cultural activities that we are so common and used to. This has been a compromise to the individual. Now, if you can imagine taking a person and adding financial pressure into the environment, giving them the inability to socialize and continue with their daily routine and maintaining all of their cultural activities, all of these restrictions further compound the impact of their mental state and affect how they're feeling. Now, I think we must recognize that we are definitely in a financial crisis. Businesses are closing down, unemployment is on the rise, individuals are losing their financial security. Unfortunately, many individuals have lost many loved ones, and we are currently living in a lot of despair. Every day we have anxiety about the future, what is going to happen. There's disruption to our education system, and each and every one of us are constantly stressed and worried if we are going to contract this particular virus. And in South Africa in particular, we have immense fear about whether we should vaccinate or not. And I can say that as a society, we are definitely heading towards a Great Depression. Now, history has shown us that the impact of mental health on societies during any particular disaster will definitely outlast the physical impacts that we will see. I would like to share a little bit more stats with you about South Africa and how we are feeling. So before COVID, we knew that within South Africa, out of every 5 South Africans that you spoke to or engaged to, 1 South African was dealing with some form of a mental health issue or condition. After COVID, that stat has gone up to 3 out of 5 South Africans have admitted that they have some form of depression, anxiety, and even resentment post-COVID landing in South Africa. Now, what's interesting is that when you consult with the 3 that have diagnosed that they definitely have a condition, only 1 of the 3 has chosen to seek health, care, and treatment. So what is the reasons that the other 2 chose not to treat their particular conditions? And individuals are saying 2 things hold them back. Firstly, they do not have access to care. It's not easy to access care for mental health. And secondly, they lack the funds to actually treat the condition that they have. Now, at this point, you may be asking, what can we do as responsible employers? I believe, firstly, we must focus on identifying mental health issues sooner within our workforce and our organization. Secondly, we need to consider the family around the employee as they form part of their mental health journey. And we must become more proactive when we're dealing with our employees' mental health and their well-being and their families, and allow them to have better access to care. And if their treatment does come at a cost, what are the measures we're going to put in to help them get the necessary treatment? The reality, Luseko, for South Africa, unfortunately, is that if we do not prioritize COVID, if we do not prioritize mental well-being right now, it is going to be the #1 pre-existing condition. And I can assure you it's going to overtake the numbers that we currently see and the prevalence of obesity and hypertension that South Africa is currently experiencing right now.
Yeah, that's quite scary. 3 out of 5 South Africans.
Yes.
The Great Depression. But one thing that you've mentioned there that we all need to be cognizant of, employers have a role to play in ensuring that we have a mental and a well-being workforce. And I'd like to hear more about that at a later stage. Now, Vusi, I'd like to bring you into the discussion because we've heard Nasima talk about COVID. However, many people have argued that the recent civil unrest across the country was led off the back of the tinderbox created by COVID. What are you worried about considering these 2 major events in South Africa?
Yeah, it is true what you say, Leseko. You know, the South African economy has been struggling for the past 3 to 5 years, you know, prior to the outbreak of COVID. So we've experienced poor economic growth, the rise of unemployment. We have been downgraded to the junk status. You know, the outbreak of COVID actually made matters worse. You know, we've seen salary cuts. We've seen people losing their jobs. You know, we've seen retrenchments. We've seen companies shutting down, which has led to a rise of the unemployment rate to a staggering 32.6%. And the sad reality is that of that 32.6%, majority of that is the youth. And we all know that a high unemployment rate is a recipe for a civil unrest. You know, the recent civil unrest in KZN and Gauteng, one, you know, would argue that it was triggered by the Zuma case. I certainly do not believe that it was actually triggered by the Zuma case. It has everything to do with unemployment rate. We've seen in the past the xenophobic attacks. We've seen the service delivery protest, which ended up in looting. You know, that tells you that people are frustrated and hungry. You know, those are the reasons why people are ending up in these acts of like looting. And if we do not address that issue, we're going to continue to experience the same. Now, to come back to your question, what am I worried about? I'm worried about the rising level of mental illness. I'm worried about the loss of lives. And I think everyone in audience is worried about the loss of lives. You know, during the service protest unrest, the recent one, we've lost over 300 lives. We've lost over 77,000 lives to COVID and counting. Fezlin mentioned that there is a statistic that has just recently been shared where over 1,500, I think it's 1.5 million children are left without caregivers. That is very concerning. Now, the impact of this, you might be asking yourself, what is the impact of it? It's impacting also the insurance companies. These are the lives that are insured. Right, so it means the insurance companies are experiencing a very high claims ratio. And the statistic that is coming out of the market is that the claims ratio is 3 times higher than the expected mortality rate. So that's how they price their premiums. They have a mortality rate, they project and anticipate the claims. It's 3 times higher. So they obviously have to recoup from the losses and plan or project for the 4th wave. You know, there was mention of the 4th and the 5th wave. They have to plan for that. Recently, we've seen premium increases of between 15 and 30% in the market. You know, that has been the average. In the past, it used to be like a single digit. Clients would approach us if there's a premium increase of 5%. This year it's 15 and 30%. Some SI is 150%. That is unaffordable. That is unsustainable. For those who can afford to stomach 150% increase, it's going to impact the retirement fund outcomes, because it means there is less money going towards their retirement fund outcomes. But I think the most concern for me is the poor and the slow uptake of the vaccination program, which is intended to deal with the very same problems that has been highlighted and what has been shared by Nasima. Now the question is, what can we do about this? We have to support our government in the vaccination program. It's upon us. We have to encourage our employees to go for the vaccination, and dismiss all these myths, around the vaccination. We have to support our government in their efforts to rebuild our economy. We have to do that. And what can retirement funds do? The retirement funds have to engage and support the infrastructure development. And I know it's a sensitive issue, but we have to support our efforts, because that's the only way we can actually create employment. We have to support small and medium businesses. That's the only way we can actually deal with the issue of unemployment and the issue of COVID.
And interestingly enough, I was listening to the news this morning as I was dropping the kids at school. And they were speaking about insurance companies having to budget more and pay out more in the past 12 months because of COVID-related illnesses, deaths, and the likes. It is quite scary. But I agree with you there when you say we need to definitely look at this risk. How do we then support each other? How do we support government to ensure that we get out of this situation? It is in the name of risk, after all. Brett, I'd like you to, because we're now talking about risk. Many of us are feeling at risk right now. How have you seen people respond to try and ease these risks?
Thank you, Lesego. Yes, definitely. People are trying to ease their concerns or their risks through seeking protection. If you think about the recent unrest, lots of people have been interrogating their cover and trying to see where their risk exposure lies. Assistance was provided by SASRIA as an organization, accommodating cover for people when they didn't have underlying policies. But people are becoming a lot more astute when interrogating their cover and no longer blindly accepting the cover that's out there in the market. There's definitely a drive to more bespoke solutions to answer the questions of the risks that people are feeling. If you think about the recent COVID lockdown and working from home, this obviously allowed time for people to start interrogating their cover, but also highlighted new risks that potentially we hadn't considered previously, like cyber risks. People are busier than ever. That often leads to more mistakes if you think of phishing scams that are out there. The corporate stat 10 years ago, Lesego, corporates were probably experiencing between 1 and 2 cyber events in a year. Currently, they're experiencing more than 150 attempts per day. And if you think about the average cost for a corporate on a cyber breach, you're looking in the region of about 36 million rand. As we embrace technology, it's integrating every aspect of our lives. Think about the exposure our families are exposing us to, our kids online every day, clicking on links. But, talking about data and technology, there's a lot more openness for us to use our data to provide customized solutions to the risks that we're seeing currently. The government has assisted currently with the POPI regulations that they let out or that they released recently. That's given people a lot more comfort about how their information is used in the public sphere.
And, interestingly enough, people, when the chips are down, the first thing you think about is cancel your insurance, which is the wrong thing to do. But you've reminded me of something here. I remember my grandmother, the first time we created an email address for her, the first email that she got was from a handsome West African prince who wanted to share half of his wealth with her in return for her banking details. And boy, was she so excited. I'm glad she didn't lose out on anything, but it was a risk. It just shows that as the world changes, even scammers change as well. They become, you're talking about 150 a day. It is companies need to take this responsibility to also educate the employees to ensure that they are aware of some of these risks that we are talking about. And Vusi, Brett has spoken about the risks. You've been speaking about the risks, and Nasima has been speaking about the risks. But what are we missing? Because is there something that we are missing in terms of these risks?
Yeah, Lesotho, before I answer your question, let me share with you some observation. You know, the beauty of being in the industry for long enough, you see certain patterns and trends with the changes that are happening in the economy, be it either the economy or legislatively. Prior to the outbreak of COVID, we've seen the highest, just after the outbreak of COVID, we've seen a change in the pattern of how members are approaching us. You know, members are now approaching us to update their wills, to update the beneficiary nomination forms, you know, to flex up their cover. You know, they want more cover. Obviously, they're dealing with the fear and the possibility of them dying prematurely due to COVID. We've seen the highest utilization in the employee wellness program. You know, we've seen cases of mental health illness rise. Insurance companies are recording high claims ratio when it comes to disability, and those disabilities are related to mental health illness. You know, people are afraid to go to hospital. Medical schemes are reporting a low claims ratio. Not because people are not sick. People are afraid to go into hospital. But the fact that you're not going into hospital, it doesn't mean that your ailment has gone away. You know, it's getting worse. And at some point, you'll have to treat that condition. So that is the what is happening in the industry, and it's telling a story. So you ask me the question, what are we missing? What is the risk? So I think the risk that we are missing is the well-being of our employees. You know, our employees are scared. They are faced with a lot of uncertainty related to their own lives. What is going to happen to them? What is going to happen to their beneficiaries? They're also worried about their jobs, social security, the retrenchments that are happening. They are worrying. So what can we do? We have to use this opportunity to engage with our employees, help them to understand. Engage with them and understand what is stressing them. You know, what is going through their minds, and also do an introspection as the employer to say, okay, how can we support our employees? What benefits, you know, can we offer to them? What support can we offer them? Where can we refer them for the health? So the risk that we're facing, Lesotho, is to take care of our employees, which is the capital that is essential for the survival of our business.
And the three of you keep mentioning one important thing in this whole equation, the employees, the well-being of the employees. And I'm hoping that the audience who have joined us online are hearing this, because without a healthier workforce, we are doomed. We are going to be crashing. Nasima, some people in the government are trying to do the right thing. We've had a lot in the news about national health insurance. What does everyone at this event need to know while we are living through this pandemic?
Sure, thank you. That's a very good question. Look, I must say, fortunately, the pandemic has shown us that when our South African public and private sector collaborate together, they do a very good job. And this started very early when COVID-19 first landed in South Africa. And our public and private sector had a common goal and a common purpose: educate and keep South Africans safe. This was demonstrated with the rise of the telemedicines and the services, and this allowed all South Africans across the country to access basic healthcare whilst we were in lockdown. So that was a great collaboration. And now recently, we've seen a second version of that, which is in the form of vaccination. When the public and private sector decided that they want to combine their administration, their expertise and resources and planning, we've seen the fastest uptake of vaccination within South Africa once they combine their effective powers. And again, they have a common goal and purpose to get South Africans vaccinated. Now, Lesotho, for me, NHI is a very interesting one. I do believe it's the right medium to provide basic healthcare to all South Africans. I know that it will definitely be achieved if we have proper collaboration between our public and private sector. However, there's still a very lengthy legislative process that must be followed before NHI can be implemented. And unfortunately, as you've seen from all of our previous comments, the state of our current economy, there's just simply not enough finances left in the pot for NHI to materialize into the medium that it's actually meant to be. Mm-hmm. Now, during the pandemic, statistics have shown us that in the private sector, and I'm speaking of our medical schemes and our health insurance products, they've had the most stable membership base. And you may be asking yourself why. People are just simply afraid to get sick during COVID without having access to private care. However, the reality is, and remains for most of our South Africans, the cost of private care is very, very elusive for the majority of South Africans. Now, just based on our engagements and our research and our studies, we've learned, whilst we learn to live with COVID, that many of our South Africans, depending on their income levels and brackets, are starting to slowly consider hybrid solutions and products as opposed to what we traditionally used to. Now, these solutions and products will definitely give the consumer more flexibility and more value for their buck, but these are the learnings that we should be considering when we're implementing NHI and building the benefit structure, so to speak. And for me, I'm very passionate. When we do have NHI implemented, it must simply have access to benefits that can help us with treatment and care for mental health.
What I'm taking out of that is that the journey to an equitable healthcare system in South Africa requires a combination of things, both from private, government, but I'd also like to pull in the employer groups as well in this because they play a major role in the state. And I would speak about that at a later stage. Brett, the issue around risk and covering risk, I mean, you spoke at length about it. But the need for insurance is constantly evolving. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, Lesego. You know, covers that were once considered solely the realm of corporate cover is now being considered across the spectrum. There's definitely a drive for solutions that talk end to end across the market, whether it be personal cover, small business cover, or even commercial risks that are being addressed. You know, with the recent economic turmoil across the world, there was an expectation of a hardening of the insurance market. What that means is less solutions available and potentially significantly increases in pricing. The positive side, what we've seen from the stats so far, is that the impact is not as severe across the world and the price increases aren't going to be as what we expected. But there's still a drive and it's essential for us to find unique solutions that talk to future risks or risks that we need to consider in the future. Similarly, I mean, if you think about telematics and how we've embraced it into our personal insurance, you know, allowing an insurer to use that information to price our risks correctly, you know, on how we use the vehicle, how we drive, how often we drive. And those kind of benefits are going to filter through to the commercial market as well. Technology transforming the market, you know, and hopefully giving us better premiums that speak to the types of risks that we need to address. Insurers as well are benefiting from absorbing technology into their systems and processes. You know, if you think about the back ends, more efficient claim processes, better identification of fraudulent claims through artificial intelligence, all of this is going to impact our premiums positively in the market.
Would you say COVID had a big impact on that, for us to think outside of the box?
Absolutely. I think it drove people to interrogate the cover, question whether it's the cover that they need as well.
Yeah. You know, Vusi, you spoke about savings, and I know you're passionate around this subject matter. You know, market in terms of savings, pensioner savings, there's been much debate sparked recently around the proposed access to pension funds. What is your view on this? And do you think this is a wise move by the government? We know people, whenever you put government and money together, people become skeptical.
Yeah, that's an interesting question and a valid one, Lesego. But the issue of accessing retirement fund savings is not a new issue. You know, it has been put on the table or proposed by the trade unions in the past. And it was shut down by Treasury for good reasons. You know, the very same reason that you are posing that, you know, it's open to abuse, you know, and it might create a leak in the system. And the South Africans, as it is, you know, we have a culture of not saving. We're not saving enough for retirement. We've heard of the statistic that only 6% of South Africans will be able to retire comfortably, meaning replacing your current income prior to you retiring. And the rest of the South Africans would retire on average with about 12,000 per month. Now, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, can we afford to live with 12,000 per month? You know, and this is based on the assumption that you have at least 8 million, you know, in your retirement fund savings, and you're drawing down 8%. You know, that 8% is also dependent on how long you live. So you can outlive your pension. So that statistic is like very concerning, which is why Treasury shut, you know, this proposal down. But, you know, having said that, you know, we cannot take away from the reality of the social issues that are being faced by South Africans. And the impact of COVID has actually demonstrated that to us. You know, if you think about it practically, it does not make sense for you. I mean, take, for example, I actually was driving to work this morning. I heard that the Mango Airlines, you know, it's under business rescue, and I think the employees were not paid for, I think, for the past 9 months or, you know, a year and a half or something to that effect. Those are the employees who have bonds. Those are the employees who have kids that need to be educated. Now, if you think about it practically, it does not make sense, assuming I'm an employee where I'm getting a salary cut of about like 50%. I'm about to lose my bond, which I'm probably like 2 or 3 years away from settling it. And I have 1.8 million sitting in my pension fund. I've got like a child that is about to be expelled from school. You know, I'm unable to secure their future. And yet I have 1.8 million rand sitting in my bank account, or 100,000 rand. It doesn't make sense. So we have to revisit the issue to say, okay, how can we address these social issues that are being faced by South Africans? You know, but at the same time, making sure that we do not create a leak in the system. So the concerns around the abuse or the loophole that is in existence, you know, they can be addressed in a number of ways. And mind you, by the way, this access to a retirement fund is not the only way you can access your retirement fund. A lot of people are experienced with these like social issues, and it's very sad. They end up resigning from their employers in order for them to be able to access these funds, and with the hope that they'll find jobs, and they don't find employment immediately. They end up being unemployed, and I've mentioned the issue of unemployment being the trigger for these like civil unrest. So it's sad, and it's something that needs to be addressed. The issue of the loophole, I think it can be addressed in a number of ways. So Treasury, they have a responsibility to make sure that they close the loopholes. They must define the exceptions. They must define the cycle. You know, there's currently, I think, a proposal of a 2-bucket system that at the point of this being approved, there will probably be a 2-bucket system where they say you can only access 1/3 of your retirement fund savings, and the 2/3 you cannot access it up until the retirement age. And the other loophole that needs to be closed is to make sure that where there is this approved exception, it needs to be paid directly to the provider, not to the member of the retirement fund, because that's where the abuse comes in. So if, for example, I need money to pay for my children's school fees or university fees, they must not pay the money to me, they must pay to the university directly. If I need money to settle my bond, it must not come directly to me. It must go to my bank to make sure that I do not abuse and come back and ask for more. So those are the things that can be done. But I believe there'll be a trade-off. You know, what do I mean by that? Currently, all the retirement annuity members or RA members, they cannot access their money up until the age of 55 or at the age of retirement, whereas pension and provident fund members can actually access their fund by resigning from their employer and access their money. I think with this exception, there'll be a trade-off whereby they'll say even including the pension and provident fund members cannot have access up until the age of retirement as a trade-off for this early access. And the same would apply to your members who have the preservation, because as a member who's preserving, you have a once in a lifetime opportunity to withdraw from your provident fund. I think there will be the trade-off.
I think the biggest question that needs to be answered here is it instant gratification? Do we need cash in our pockets? Are we a heavily indebted society that we do not have liquid cash? And we see the need to access these vehicles. And what are we doing with regards to savings? I mean, there's a scary stat that speaks to only a majority of South Africans only saving 11%, and the average that should be saved is about 15% on their retirement.
100%. It is.
Education needs to be driven in this environment. We need to drive education. Now, I'm a practical person, and listening to you guys, you've spoken about some of the issues that we've currently faced with. issues of mental wellness, issues of savings, issues of insurance, and not having enough cover. But Nasima, let's be practical. Let's talk about a future with some practical implications here. The COVID vaccinations are rolling out steadily. There has been some hesitancy, but what can we expect once the numbers start increasing? The people that are, what should company leaders be thinking about? How would they support this?
Yeah, thank you. I actually love that question because I have a very strong opinion about it. And I think, firstly, we must admit this is one tiny little virus that has equalized the entire human species across the entire world. Everything that our panel has said here today about our current risks has always been here. But this pandemic has just amplified our awareness of these risks, and it has moved along a lot faster in its progression. Now, life today definitely moves at a very faster pace than it did 100 years ago, and this is with the help of technology and science. This is the very reason why we can produce vaccines at the rate we can, and we can run things like genome sequencing that helps us identify these new strains that actually pass us, daily. Now, technology is definitely the fastest medium to also spread fear and anxiety, and I want to give you an example. If we look at social media today, everyone is inundated with a lot of negativity around the vaccination process and why you should and shouldn't get vaccinated. And this technology moving as fast as it is confusing our South Africans. Should I or should I not vaccinate? And I think each and every one of us, we've got to have the courage to choose a side and recognize that being unvaccinated is definitely a global risk that we put ourselves in. And the longer we remain unvaccinated, it puts us further away from this elusive 70% herd immunity that we want for South Africa and for all of the other countries as well. But why do we want that, right? So let me give the South African audience today an example of what they're missing out on. I've got family living in the UK, and I've heard of their experience recently as they've hit 63% of their population fully vaccinated. Now, please bear in mind, South Africa is only sitting with 7% of our population vaccinated. And their Prime Minister now has allowed certain parts of their states to actually ease their lockdown measures. And this is incredible. Some areas have even been allowed to go around without wearing masks anymore. And this is what South Africa is missing out on. We're giving up our freedom just because we are scared and have fear and anxiety about vaccination. Now, we must also acknowledge that vaccination rollout globally has definitely been uneven. There's been varied degrees of speed and distribution and lots of disparities there. But unfortunately, the longer we take to vaccinate allows this tiny little virus to mutate into newer strains, and that will affect people who are not vaccinated, and that will affect them more adversely. And just remember, same effects, the more sick people we have, they cannot go to work. If you cannot go to work, you continue to impact the economy. And as the economy doesn't pick up, we get further rises in unemployment. And the tragedy of that is that we're going to continue to lose our loved ones. Now, again, at the very start, when I mentioned if you take the pot, you put the individual in, they're dealing with financial pressures, the loss of loved ones, anxiety, fear. This vicious cycle in mental health and illness is going to continue just because we haven't put in the measures that we can control this with. I must say, Luseka, it's very unlikely that South Africa is going to reach our herd immunity in 2021. And unfortunately, our country will be faced with a fourth and a fifth wave as this virus does mutate. And more of our South Africans can only change that stat by getting vaccinated and in order for us to get to herd immunity. Now, there's a different approach. If you can't get to herd immunity, you've got to come up with containment strategies. And that's the only way we will be able to live with COVID-19 in a largely unvaccinated country. The way I see it for the future, COVID-19 treatment, right? It's envisioned that those who are vaccinated will eventually have to take annual boosters to keep their immunity at bay because the virus obviously continues to mutate. And the likelihood is that for our children, COVID-19 vaccination will become part of their immunization cards. But for our employers today, they've got to consider how do they put COVID-19 screening and vaccination into their health and safety protocols, into their annual screenings, into their medicals, because that all supports the containment strategy that we're going to need to keep this virus at bay. I think as South African citizens, I would challenge each and every person listening in today. You've got to ask yourself, are you prepared to go to work, to live, to be in contact, or travel with somebody who's unvaccinated, knowing very well the risk that they pose to you and your loved ones, because you're taking home what they haven't taken in terms of a vaccination, you're taking home their virus. We've got to stop sitting on the fence. We've got to make a decision so that we can get our lives back to the normality that we actually need.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, I'm reminded of the scenes that I saw on Sunday while I was watching the English Premier League. I mean, the stadiums were full, people not wearing masks, and we're deprived of that. My thing is, go get a jab. Don't be an anti-vax, because by being an anti-vax, you're depriving me of football.
Yes.
One thing that I really like. We'll see. Knowing what you've shared with us in terms of the pension fund and prescribed asset debate, what other types of savings vehicles should consumers be looking into? And what are the considerations they need to keep in mind with these ones?
Yeah, Lesotho, maybe before I get your question, I just, would like to say that I can't wait for us to get to a point where we can get back to our lives, where we can live without the masks. I miss seeing people like smile, it's a beautiful thing, to see people like smile. Now, coming back to your question, I did mention earlier that as South Africans, we have a poor culture of saving. And sadly, the reality is that for many South Africans, the only investment vehicle that we have or is used by South Africans is retirement funds. And that in itself, the reason why we have the retirement fund savings as the only form of of savings, is because of its compulsory nature. You join an employer, they say you have to be part of this retirement fund savings, and we use it as the only measure of saving. And even there, we are not saving enough. You did mention the statistic that on average, South Africans are saving a net of about 11.2%. The minimum that is recommended is 15%, right? And assuming you are under the age of 25 and you're planning to retire at the age of 60. And if we're to compare ourselves to our global counterparts, they're saving about 25%. We're very far off, when you compare ourselves to our global counterparts. But what makes matters worse and is very concerning is that this is compounded by the premature withdrawal of the single form of savings that we have, which is the retirement funds. I did mention that every time employees change employment, especially the youngsters, they cash out. And I also did that. I'm not pointing fingers. When I changed employment, I cashed out and I was thinking, what can I buy?
I know that Golf 5
GTIs, yeah, we've all been there. So it's sad, and it's something that needs to be addressed. Now, to answer your question, which investment vehicle can we choose? There's a number of them. There's endowment, there's sinking funds, there's call accounts that are like a type of like a bank account, sort of like call account. There is retirement funds. There's a number of them. There's unit trust. And your question is, which one is the ideal one or the suitable one? It depends on your investment objective. It depends on the term of investment. It depends on your risk appetite. Are you tolerant to the market fluctuations? So you can see there's a lot of determining factors in terms of like which investment vehicle to choose. Now, you would need a financial planner to guide you through that. But I think the starting point is that the saving, if you're saving for an emergency, you need to make sure that the investment vehicle or instrument that you are choosing is liquid, because you never know, you can never plan for an emergency. So you need to make sure that you can access your funds immediately with minimal penalties or no penalties. A call account, a bank call account is an example of that. And if you are planning to invest maybe for to buy a house in 5 years' time, you're planning for a wedding, education of your kids, you can afford to invest long term. You can afford to lock your money into an endowment. For example, if you're investing in an endowment or a sinking fund, minimum period is 5 years. You withdraw. Prior to that period, there's penalties that do apply. So it all depends on your investment strategy that you are going to choose. So the the advice that I can share with the employees who have not saved enough for their retirement. Is that, and myself, and I use myself as an example, I did mention that I was one of those who withdrew prematurely. So the trick that you can apply, and I've seen this works beautifully, is that each time you get a salary increase, and I'm hoping that employers do still do offer a salary increases. Assuming you're getting a salary increase of 5%, right? You can sacrifice 2% of that and take 3%. So you're still getting a salary increase, and at the same time, you're increasing your retirement fund contributions. Year 5, you would have increased your retirement fund contributions by 10%. It might seem like a small account, a small amount. You know, ask an investment specialist, they'll tell you the difference it makes in your retirement fund outcomes or your net replacement ratio. And if you continue to do that, you can actually do that up to a maximum of 350,000 per annum or 27.5%. Thereafter, you no longer get the tax deduction, but that would improve your retirement outcomes massively. So yeah, to answer your question, it depends. I would advise you to consult with a financial planner to assess your requirements and your risk appetite, and then we'll take it from there.
I mean, there's that beautiful word, compounding, compound interest.
Yes.
So that keeps playing in my head because little by little, what do the Afrikaners say?
Biki maak meer.
Remember that. And that's quite interesting. So it really does boil down to the choices consumers are willing to make in determining their financial future. Speaking to the matters of choice, Brett, I've heard some of the craziest stories around this in terms of what clients want to insure. Can you share some of them with us? What is the craziest thing people have wanted to insure?
Yeah, Lesega, I think we automatically think to the international market where you've got people insuring guitarists' fingers and footballers' feet. In America, I think you can insure against an alien abduction. But I think probably the most interesting one that I've dealt with recently is we had to source solutions for a rhino preserve that was actually culling rhino horns, obviously to try and protect them against being poached. If you think about the value in those horns, the storage and the transportation of it, we had to find a solution in the market for it. You know, also from an insurer's perspective, the globalization that we're seeing currently, there's a lot more to consider when they're looking at a risk or particular risk. There are even moral risks that potentially could span different continents. The market has to evolve currently. I mean, if we think of a simple thing like cryptocurrency, there's nothing in the market that talks to the losses that we may experience in the cryptocurrency losses that we may experience. Another one to think about, self-driving vehicles. Where does the liability lie if the vehicle potentially causes an accident? And that's currently where the market needs to find solutions for us.
Maybe you could answer this one last question for me. If Optimus Prime were to be looking for insurance, would he get life insurance or car insurance?
I don't know if I can answer that one for you to say. I'm more dad.
Well, even an expert cannot answer that. Well, thank you to the panel. You guys certainly shared some great insights, and it really boils down to the fact that we have a choice in how we respond to these challenges. And the actions we take, adaptability and new ways of thinking certainly are the only way we can prevail in the future. Now we'd like to take some questions from our viewers. Our moderator has been monitoring your questions and the comments that have been coming through via our Q&A. Let's take a look at what they have been saying. I'll take a few questions from for you, Vusi. Let's start with that. One of the people says, one of the audience says, we have seen reports for over 15 years that 6% of the people retire with retirement funds are financially independent. Do we actually continue with retirement funds?
Most definitely, Lesego, we have to continue. I did mention that sadly for South Africans, retirement savings is the only form of savings that the South Africans use to provide for retirement or for saving for that matter. If we do not continue addressing or encouraging members to save for retirement, we're going to be shifting the responsibility to the government. And we know government does not have enough money to take care of all of us. Now, we need to unpack the question, why do we have this problem? Why aren't people saving enough? I did speak about the challenges of premature withdrawal. Why are people withdrawing before they retire? You know, there's ways that we can actually address those issues. Why aren't people preserving? You know, what form of incentives can we implement that will keep them invested? You know, do we demonstrate the value of compound interest you spoke about? You know, some people don't know the impact of withdrawing. A lot of people withdraw and think that I will catch up, you know, with making additional contributions, and you miss out on that compound interest. So we need to engage with the members, show them, demonstrate to them. You know, there's shared value, and I'm not going to mention providers, but some providers are saying, okay, if you put in something and you stay invested, I'll give you something. But if you withdraw your money before your retirement age, I'm going to give you back what I had put in place for you to save and encourage you to stay invested. So there are solutions. We cannot break the only system of saving that we have just because, you know, we are failing at encouraging people to save more.
Correct. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I think all the questions that have been sent in via the Q&A will be responded to online, and yeah, the team, the panel will get hold of you and respond to that. But for now, I've taken, this has been so intriguing listening to you guys. I mean, we spoke about choice, disruption, the future, but more importantly for me is how to be practical and have practical ways in dealing with the current issues that we're facing. To that, I thank you very much. It's been great facilitating this discussion. For the second insight of the program, I will hand over back to Fazlin, who will take over from here. My name is Lesego. I thank you very much.
Well, I most certainly have enjoyed the session. You've given us so much to actually think about. I mean, I loved some of the things that came out, the looting of skills, the equalization of the human race, the cost of cybersecurity. And of course, I mean, last but not least, let's not be an anti-vax. I think I'm a huge supporter of vaccines. So I'd like to just take the opportunity to thank you as our panelist. I mean, you've no doubt given us so much to think about, but I also think that, you know, now that our audience is feeling a little more equipped with what's to come, I'm sure a lot of them are wondering, how do they actually begin to start implementing this in their day-to-day life? How can they use the knowledge to create the future that they want for themselves, their family, and their employees? So it brings me to our next speaker. And our next speaker is going to be guiding us through some of the practical tools that will help you to use the power of perception and influence to shape your future. Many of you, I know, have watched the show called The Mentalist. Well, we have our very own South African mentalist, and we've invited him to join us here today. You may have heard about him in dozens of radio shows, TV shows, all around the world. He's an expert, I know, on topics of reading and influencing people. I mean, I've been wondering sitting here what he's thinking about us. But he's also authored many best-selling books, one called Persuasion Games, and the founder of the Influence Institute. He's presented in over 40 countries. Not many people I know have done that. And to groups such as NATO, Fortune 500 corporations, and business organizations. Please help me welcome the mentalist, Gillian Gork, by way of this video.
Hello, hello. Can you guys see me? Can they see me? Yes, awesome. I'm so happy to be here, guys, to be able to connect with you and to be around people and to be able to actually do these mentalism experiments on people and not to just to screens. I just want to say, firstly, I was obviously backstage listening to you guys. Discussion, really, really interesting stuff. I mean, I'm fascinated with anything that involves people, and I guess, you know, besides all the numbers and the figures and everything, we're really in kind of the human business, you know, the people business over here, and so that's what I do as a mentalist. I am curious. I always ask this question, and seeing as I can't see everyone's response at home or in your office or your home office, I just want to ask for you guys to kind of respond, because usually when I'm introduced as a mentalist, and Fazlin, you kind of gave such a great introduction, thank you, but I'd never ever know how many people have actually heard of what a mentalist is before. So how many of you guys have actually heard of what a mentalist is? Just show me with your hands if you have heard of me. You have, awesome. And everyone else in studio, just a show of hands, everyone's heard of a mentalist. Awesome. In case you guys weren't aware, there's an amazing team running this whole thing. You have no idea what it takes to bring such a slick virtual event to you. So big ups to everyone. You know, usually the only kind of reference to a mentalist that people have when I do live talks, usually there's actually only a few hands that go up when I'm in front of a big audience. Usually people have only heard about what a mentalist is because they've seen the TV show called The Mentalist. And, you know, his character, I see lots of heads nodding over here, his character, Patrick Jane, is based on someone like me who, you know, lands up working for the FBI and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, that's a fictitious story. But as a mentalist, I specialize in reading and influencing people. And a lot of what I do can come across as seeming almost like psychic or supernatural. If you've ever heard me on radio where people are calling in and I'm kind of telling them what they're thinking, or my live shows, or when you see me on TV, you know, like I was on Car Blanche a few years ago where I had Derek Watts next to me in a car, and they put me on Swartkorp's racetrack and put a steel blindfold on me and a bag over my head, and I had to navigate through this this racetrack. And as we went on, they said, Gilan, we put obstacles on there, you're not allowed to look at them beforehand. You know, that stuff really seems psychic or supernatural. But I'm the first to tell you that I have zero psychic or supernatural abilities. There's actually quite an academic side to being a mentalist. So I encourage you to ask questions throughout our session, but do not ask if I've been to Hogwarts. I get asked this question a lot. I have no affiliation whatsoever with Harry Potter. Everything that we do here is academic. Now, listen, I've got a lot that I want to share with you here today, but I thought for those of us who have never ever heard of a mentalist or experienced a mentalist before, I thought let's have a little warm up. Let's have a mentalist experiment. And in fact, you can participate as well, sitting at home or at your office through the chat box. Let me explain to you exactly how it works. This experiment has a lot to do with influence, which is quite a broad topic, but specifically subconscious influence. If I say subconscious or subliminal influence, what do you guys get from that? What do you think that is?
We're not aware of.
Exactly. What's influencing our mind when we're not aware that it's influencing our mind, right? And so that's the theme of this experiment. I have placed the results of this experiment inside this envelope here. You guys can see that I've got a little a piece of paper that's folded up with something printed on inside. And on the front of this envelope, I have scribbled, you have to excuse my handwriting, I have scribbled a very powerful acronym. When you see it, I just want you to go with all manners of association. Actually, there's really no right or wrong here. All that I did was I wrote ASI on the front here, just so that I knew that this was for this event here today. But listen, as you see it, like I mentioned, you know, just allow all manners of association. In fact, let me put it on screen so everyone can see it nice and big. Let me go and click. Is it clicking through? Well, let's try again. There we go, ASI. Now, again, just allow, like, you know what, even when I say that I'm doing an influence experiment, some people, they land up thinking, is he going to manipulate me? Is he going to think of my deepest, darkest secrets? Cannot confirm nor deny that I'm able to do that. Just allow any manner of association. We're going to get back to this in a moment. I need one of our panelists to look after it, someone who looks really trustworthy. Just pop it down over here on the table and just make sure no one touches it. Obviously, everyone can see that we haven't touched it. All right, thanks, man. All right, so now this experiment is something that we're all going to do here, but I want you to do as well, and you're going to let us know in the chat box. It is very, very simple. I'm going to go quite quickly over here. We have got two lists of words. We've got list A and list B. Everything that I have been saying here today, every little thing, even the jokes that I've made, everything has been to try and influence you to be drawn towards certain words. And so right now, as you're staring at those two lists of words, I want you to choose one word from list A and one word from list B. Go ahead and think of it right now, and I want you guys to do the same right now as well. Now, what you'll notice is that you can actually put the words together. So let's say, for example, you chose the word effective from list A, and let's say you chose the word future-proofing in list B, then the term would be effective future-proofing. That makes sense, right? So I want you to think to yourself, what is the term that your two words have made? Go ahead and think of that right now. Now, you may have changed your mind many, many times. That's all good, but I want you to go ahead and solidify your answer in your mind. You're not going to change your mind again on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, and you got your answer solidified. The only time that you would change your mind is if someone chose the same one, which is possible because obviously I'm trying to get you guys to think in certain ways. By the way, I just want to make sure, and I just want to confirm all of our panelists here, you have no idea actually what we're about to do. Like, we haven't rehearsed this. You have no idea, other than we're going to do an experiment. Like, we've not set it up. I've not paid you guys to like say the words I want you to say. This is completely authentic, right? And of course, we're going to use you guys at home as well. Now, here's the next part of the experiment, because we want to make this have like a 1 in millions and millions and millions chances of me actually knowing what this would be if it was purely by chance. So you've got your two words. What you'll notice is that there's a number next to each of your words. So for example, using the same one that we chose before, effective has a 1 next to it and future-proofing has a 2. And so if you just put them side by side, that would give us 12. 1 and 2 would be 12. So you're not adding it up. We're not doing addition here yet, but just go ahead and put it next to each other. And you should have a 2-digit number in your mind right now. Can I confirm that you guys will have a 2-digit number in your mind? You have no idea. Well, I have no idea what that would be. You had no idea what it would be up until now. You guys watching also have it. I want you, if you're watching this through your computer, to go ahead in the chat box and let us know what were your two words and what was the 2-digit number that it made. Because in a moment, I'm going to use your number. We've got the team over here who is going to be looking to find a number. And I'll say to you guys, you know, if you see a common ones coming up, feel free to choose them. I just want you guys to be drawn to them as well based on what you're coming up. And I'll ask that at the end. Now, we're going to do something to even increase the odds of this just going absolutely crazy and me having no idea how this will work out. We're going to do like the weirdest random calculation over here. So I have got over here a calculator. Obviously, everyone's welcome to kind of follow along at home if you want your calculator as well. I'm going to go to each one of you. I'm going to ask you to tell us what your word is and what the number is. We're going to punch it in. We're going to add them all up. All right. So Lasepa, what was yours?
The number was 41, and the word was high performance leadership.
High performance leadership. Go ahead and press 41 on the calculator over there. 41. Thank you very much. Fazen, what was yours?
Powerful leadership. So it's 01.
01. So we're going to go ahead and press plus and just press 1 over there. Excellent. Very much. And press plus again. And actually, you'll see that it's adding it up there. So we got the running total as well. All right, Brett, what was yours?
Influential communication. 23.
23. Influential communication. Go ahead and press 23 over there. 2, 3. Press plus. You can see it's adding it up over there. Nasima, what is yours?
Powerful knowledge, 07.
07. So you can go ahead and just press 7 over there and press plus. Excellent. Busi, what is yours?
Great. Mine was influential and knowledge. So that's 27.
27. We didn't have 27 for you,
No,
eh?
7.
Yeah. So yours was just 7. Yours was 27.
27.
Isn't it amazing? We got lots of 2s, lots of 7s coming up. Go ahead and press 27 over there. 27, press plus, you can see that it's adding it up. Now we want one answer that came from everyone at home. And what would that be? Whichever one you feel drawn to. 11, so we have effective leadership. Effective leadership. Okay, now what's really weird is that was probably the hardest one for me to try and actually influence. Rick, go ahead and just press 11 over there for me, just on their behalf. Thank you very much. And go ahead and will you just press equals? Thank you very much. Now, we want to actually stand up for me, Brett. We've got this like weird number that everyone has kind of come to together, right? Go ahead and actually hold the calculator. I sometimes like to deal in a bit of risk myself, and in fact, but in a different kind of way. I have over here a money pouch. You can see that there is a 200 Rand note in it, and there's also a folded piece of paper. In fact, President, would you hold on to this? All right, don't let anyone touch it. Just if I lose the bet, you get to keep the 200 Rand. You get to keep the 200 Rand. We're going to come back to that in a moment. Okay, so now we're going to add even more chance into this. All right, everyone's going to be convinced that there's no way that we could know this ahead of time. I have got some what almost look like lotto balls. It's just basically 3 circles with 3-digit numbers in each. They're kind of random 3-digit numbers. You can choose number A, B, or C. We're going to divide by it, okay? So just, which one do you want, A, B, or C?
B.
You want B? So press divide and go ahead and punch in the number and press equals. And we've now got, you can actually show it to the camera, we've got like a really long number that's got tons of, just hold there so they can try to get a nice zoom in there, tons of different decimals. There's no way that we would know what these are, but we're going to add in another layer of choice over here. So let me just stand over here, Brett. Let's just take like the last 6 digits. Just call them out for me. Just call them out, and I'll write them over here.
The last 6 digits.
The last 6 digits, yes.
Okay. 3,
3,
1, 9,
3, 1, 9,
1, 5, 8.
1, 5, 8.
Last
Okay,
6.
now listen, go ahead, just hold out your hands like this. And we're going to imagine that, say, 319 is here in this hand, and 518 is in this hand. And what you're going to do is throw one of those, not the phone, you're going to throw one of those numbers over to me. So go ahead and you're just going to throw one of them away to me. Which one are you throwing away?
319.
You want to throw away 319.
Yeah.
Are you sure you want to throw away 319?
Throwing away 319.
You can change your mind if you want. Do you want to change
Throwing
your
away
mind?
319.
If you don't change your mind, you're going to wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning thinking, what would have happened? Okay. All right. Throw it away. Throw it away. Okay, so we got 158, which came from everyone's words, numbers being added up. You divided it. You decided which one to throw away. And we were left with 158. Go ahead and hold this for me over here. We have the envelope, which you've been keeping safe over here, which I said if the influence works, the results of the experiment will be inside the envelope, which we will open up right now. Let's have a look inside, and printed in the envelope is the number 158. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Yeah, don't worry. You guys are more than welcome to bow. But no, I'm just kidding. Now, here's the thing. You might think to yourself, well, thank you very much. You can actually take a seat. You might be thinking, well, that's some really good maths. Some weird formula that he's used over there. And here's the thing, is that obviously none of this would have worked had you not thought of, chosen the words that you would have, otherwise it wouldn't have worked. We would have had to completely different numbers. And so I had, President, would you actually stand up? I'm going to ask you to take out what's behind the 200 Rand note and tell us what it is. It's actually stapled. So let's go ahead and actually show the camera. It's folded in 3 and it's actually totally stapled shut. So you're going to have to destroy it a little bit. Yeah, like rip the staple open. And tell us first, what is it?
Okay, it's a lotto ticket.
It is a lotto ticket. Let me show it to you guys over here. It's a very old lotto ticket that I took out actually a couple of years ago when I designed this experiment. And I want you to go ahead and tell us, now this is in numerical order because that's what happens with lotto tickets. It won't be in the order that things were called out. But if you hear your number being called out, In fact, if you could just raise your hands, all of you, raise one hand. If you hear your number being called out, put your hand down. We'll hopefully have everyone's hand down with, of course, the number 11 that was chosen from our audience at home. Go ahead and read out. The first number is?
01.
01.
That's mine.
That was yours. What's the next one?
07.
07.
11.
11 was you guys at home, which was actually chosen under immense pressure and influence here in the studio. Yes.
23.
23.
That's mine.
That's yours.
27.
27 is Lucy's. And the final one is?
41.
41, Lesego. That is 6 numbers. Thank you very much.
Thank
You can actually keep that.
And if you throw me 200 rand.
Well, the 200 rand bet wasn't if you win on the lotto.
Oh,
If you do win, I get half. This is, in fact, all of you watching, if you win, you contact me, right? Because I get half of that. But listen, I get as nervous. You can you see me shaking like a little child over here? Like, I never know if this is actually going to work right up until the moment that it all works. But let me just say this, right? For that to actually happen by chance is over 1 in 42 million chance of that happening. People, when they say to me, Gilan, are you a psychic? I'm not a psychic. And, like they say, well, what are the lotto numbers? I can't tell you because I can't predict which little plastic balls are going to come out of a machine. But when it comes to people, we kind of made, in effect, a human lotto machine over here, totally random. That's where we know that influence can help us to guide us towards outcomes that we want. And this, of course, is getting into the whole theme of what today is about, which is the power of knowing, perception, the ability to almost be able to see into the future. And so that's really how this all came to be, through influence. I obviously influenced it. And it really doesn't matter how that actually happened, how it worked. What really matters is for us to acknowledge that there was stuff going on that I was doing to influence the outcome to be that you were unaware of. And so back to the theme of kind of subconscious influence, we can all relate to the experience of something influencing us and we got no conscious awareness of it. We're all being influenced by stuff all the time, every single day. And the reason why this is relevant is because one of the things I want to share with you here today is my rapid influence formula, which is based on subconscious questions that other people's minds are asking about you and that your mind is even asking about itself. And through this formula, we're able to create powerful influence to be able to apply everything we know, no matter what situation, no matter what circumstance we find ourselves in, even difficult ones that have been discussed here by the panel today. I firmly believe that influence is a skill that can help us navigate it and get closer to the outcomes that we want. And I will share with you why. So let's dive straight into it. One of my favorite sayings is that the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I'm going to share with you how we can influence the future. That's how I believe we can create it. For now, before we dive into it, I just want to thank you guys for participating in the experiment. You guys are welcome to leave the stage, and I will take over from here. Thank you very much. You want to take that with? Well, I actually need the envelope still. You can, I'll give it to you afterwards. I'm going to reveal something really, really freaky at the end of this talk. All right, so let me watch my time because I know that I've got so much to share with you in such a short period of time. Let's talk about how we can future-proof ourselves and how we can predict and create and influence our future through the formula. I want to give you 5 minutes of context on how this formula actually was created throughout my journey, which will also hopefully have a couple of insights for you as well that you can use. This is a picture of me when I was just out of school. As I'm looking at it on one of the screens over here, this suit that I'm wearing, I actually asked my dad if it was his. He thought that it was maybe his dad. You can see it's like really big for me. I came from these kind of humble beginnings. I just wanted to be a famous mentalist. When I was in high school, I happened to meet mentalists. I was blown away by what they could do. I obviously had the knack for it. They took me under their wing. And this is what I was obsessed about. So I started doing shows. I wanted to be a mentalist. But then I heard one day the saying that the biggest enemy of a great life is a good life. I don't know if you've heard that before. It's not original to me, but it really It really impacted me, and because I was actually in a comfortable place, similar to how many of us were comfortable before things like COVID and these really difficult situations. But came 2008 was the first time that I experienced a crisis that really shook the ground from under me with the economic crisis. And the first thing companies cut were things like events. And surely they weren't going to hire me because I was just doing it as entertainment at the time. Entertainment was one of the first expenses to be cut. So I really had to be as agile as possible and think to myself, how can I take myself from where I am now to where I want to be, create the future that I want, and future-proof myself for the future, for anything happening as well. So that's kind of where it all started. At that point, I decided to myself, I'm going to get into what's called the expert industry. I'm going to go from entertainment, just demonstrating these mentalist feats, to teaching, training, coaching. And because I was so passionate about influence, I was walking into executives' offices. How I was getting those appointments when I was like a young 20-something, I managed to, and they would look at me pretty much with this kind of folded arms, skeptical look, thinking to themselves, what are you going to teach me? I mean, these guys had like 2-3 times the amount of business and life experience that I had. And so at that point, I realized that this was going to be a little bit more difficult than I thought. But I came across this guy's story at the time, and I want to share it with you. I don't know if you recognize him. If you do recognize him, if you think you know who he is, type it in the chat who you think it is. Well, I'm going to tell you now anyways, right? It's Sir Tim Berners-Lee. I probably said it before you had a chance to type it. This is the man who invented the World Wide Web. He is part of the reason why we're actually able to connect with each other right now in this way. Now, at the time that he invented the web, he worked for an organization called CERN. You can actually see the logo on the monitor in the picture there. It was the European Organization for Nuclear Research, and he faced a massive challenge. He had this idea for the World Wide Web, and he had to influence his employers at CERN to support him working on this thing. Now, remember, now in hindsight, we go, well, look at all the benefits of it. It was a no-brainer. But back then, nobody really knew what it would actually amount to. And so after many, many months to and fro, eventually they said yes. But once he invented the web, he faced an even greater challenge. Can you guess what that was? His challenge was to influence his employers at CERN to make the World Wide Web available to the public, royalty-free. And in fact, he still fights for the free web to this day. Now, would you agree that had he failed to influence his employers to agree to that, the World Wide Web and actually the world as a whole, as we know it today, would not exist? Would you agree with that? And so what is the moral that I took out of the story at the time that I want to share with you? Is that so often in life, we have amazing ideas. So often we got to make changes in our lives. Sometimes we've got to make big decisions. Sometimes we need to influence other people, whether it be our employers, whether it be our colleagues, whether it be our spouses. We got to influence people to buy into that, right? To support that. But no matter what your idea is, in any context, maybe it's even an idea that you're trying to sell. In life, the ability to influence people to buy into our ideas is often even more important than the idea itself. Because there are life-changing ideas in the world, just the same way as the World Wide Web changed all of our lives, that will never see the light of day, that will never help humanity because there wasn't enough influence to help people buy into it. So influence is a really positive thing in that light. And so I thought to myself, I need to develop my influence to be able to sit in front of any executive and have them buy in. I remember that I was at the point in my story where I thought to myself, maybe I should just go back to entertainment. But one day I woke up and I thought to myself, Gilan, you can reach for your excuses or you can reach for your dreams, but the gap between them is too wide. You can only hang on to one at the same time. And sometimes in life, we need to make difficult decisions. We need to make decisions for our life, whether it be financial decisions or any other decision as well. Sometimes we need to back ourselves and put ourselves first and think of our future and say, you know what, if that's the future that I want, then I need to stop hanging on to my excuses. I need to make a plan. I can't hold on to both at the same time. And so this rapid influence formula that I'm about to share with you was born out of my saying, I'm going to go back, develop influence, record exactly how I've deconstructed influence so that I can predictably share it with other people. It's a very simple formula. It's not going to take me long to share it with you. But because it's so simple, I wanted to share the story with you so that you understand the high impact that it can make in your life. This formula alone, this simple formula that I'm about to share with you, has helped me to present in over 40 countries, have my best-selling book, Persuasion Games, presenting at the World Sales Forum in America, Singularity University, being the opening keynote speaker for the NATO Strategic Communications Conference in Latvia, speaking to hundreds of people from military, private sector, obviously politicians, academia, all of this. In fact, what did NATO hire me to come and present? My rapid influence formula, which I'm about to share with you right now. So if it's good enough for all of these world leaders, I promise you it will make a difference in your life as well. So please do not discount how simple it is and think that it's not that effective. This is what I've based everything on. So let me go through it. The rapid influence formula, like I mentioned, is based on the subconscious questions that other people's minds are asking about you every single time that they interact and engage with you. But I'm going to share with you how you can use it on yourself as well. And that's actually going to be the main focus. But it's easier for me to explain it at first in the context of influencing others. And I'm sure that you'll find it useful as well in context of leadership, in context of sales, marketing, negotiation, communication, conflict management. All of that can be benefited by this formula. Each one of those symbols on screen now in this Venn diagram represents one of the subconscious questions. Now, because they're subconscious, people don't consciously realize that they're asking these questions about you. They just get a feeling about the answers. And the more positively you're able to answer these questions in their minds, the more influence you'll be able to have with them. And the faster, the more rapidly you're able to answer these three questions in their minds, the faster you'll be able to establish that influence. So here are the three questions. The first question is, are you reliable? Can I rely on you? Do you do what you said you're going to do when you said you're going to do it? Another way to think of it, instead of using the word reliability, is consistency. You know, are you consistent? Are you consistent in your values, your principles? When I meet you on one day, are you like a really cool person to me and the next day you're just a jerk? You know, like, are you consistent in your personality, in your mood? All of these things comes down to giving a feeling about, hey, this person is reliable. I can rely on that person. So reliability is the first question that people's minds are asking about you. The second question is, are you capable of helping me? Everybody needs help with something. It could be something technical, it could be something even emotional, it could be mental, whatever the case is. We all need help with multiple things, right? So people are wondering, are you capable of helping me? And the third question is, do you care about me? And I put that at the bottom of the diagram, almost as if it's holding up the other two. Because if somebody does not feel that you've got their best interests at heart, then it doesn't matter how reliable or capable you are, chances are they'll rather want to be influenced, because we allow ourselves to be influenced by people who we know have got our best interests at heart. But when you're able to answer all three questions positively in people's minds, through your actions, your behaviors, how you're communicating, your track record over time, you're creating what I call transformational influence. The reason I call it transformational is because you're transforming, being able to influence the direction that people move in, either through the direction of their thoughts, direction of their actions, and so on. Now, obviously, where all of these this is why I love Venn diagrams, because they show the relationship between things. What we see over here in the final slide of the influence formula is that when we answer these three questions positively in people's minds, what we're producing, the outcome of that is developing trust, credibility, and support. You're supporting them and they're supporting you, so it's bi-directional. And so just imagine what you can do in your life when you are developing trust, credibility, and support with others through answering these three questions. Now, here's the thing, right? We have two different modes or games of influence. We have the outer game of influence, which is what I just described to you, which is our ability to influence others. And let me tell you that, I know that it's not just about influencing others to buy into, ideas in a business sense, although I know a lot of you will probably get value from that. But, when we need to make decisions, even financial decisions about our life, about our future, we will need the buy-in of other people. We're going to need to communicate. Every time that there's an interaction between you and another human being making decisions together, there's always an exchange of influence. And as a result of you attending this great event, you're leaving with insights that can help you to make better decisions, and you may need to influence others to be able to buy into those decisions as well. So that's the outer game of influence. But then we have the inner game of influence. The inner game are our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs. Some of them are, we know our beliefs. There are also self-limiting beliefs that are that we're not consciously aware of. That all falls part of the inner game of influence. And what I found after presenting in many different countries, many different types of people, if we do not change, if we don't work on our inner game, then our outer game inevitably reverts back to what it was in the first place. So it's no good just to focus on the outer game of influence. So I'm going to switch now from the outer game into sharing with you the inner game of how you can use this formula on yourself. Because your mind is actually asking yourself these 3 questions about yourself. So through the way that you actually behave, through the actions that you take, through the way that you conduct your life, your brain is logging everything, and you're forming a self-perception of, am I reliable? Am I capable of helping me? And do I care about me? So reliability is formed through things like consistency and discipline. Discipline would be more like the habits that we have. Consistency could relate to that, but could also be things like, have I actually spent time defining what my values are? Have I spent time defining who I am, how I want to show up, and remain consistent to that? Capability, self-capability, is formed through learning, practicing, and growing. And I'll break that down a little bit more as well. But let me just say for now that you have a self-perception on how capable you are of reaching the future that you want, of achieving your goals, of achieving your dreams, whether that is to be able to retire comfortably or whether it's to retire on any kind of level. What your mind is forming is a sense of, am I capable? You may not have the knowledge and abilities or experience right now to answer that as to say, yes, I am capable. But if you are learning, practicing, and growing, then you know that you are on track to having the ability and skills to be able to be the right kind of person to achieve those things. And that gives you a great sense, a positive sense of self-capability as well, to say, I am on the right road to those dreams, to those goals, to that future. The last one is self-care. Care is developed in mastering your mind, and we'll delve into that a little bit. So that's kind of the high level of it. Let me go into breaking up each one in the last 10 minutes or so that we have together, and to give you some practical things to do. So when it comes to reliability, you need to do what you say you're going to do when you said you're going to do it, right? Even when no one is watching. That's really what forms that sense of self-trust. And when it comes to trust, you can think of this analogy of having a pocket that's full of silver coins. And every single time you do something, you say you're going to start something, but you don't actually get started. And that could be anything, by the way. It could be saving money. It could be a new eating plan. It could be exercise. It could even be, just saying, hey, I'm going to be more punctual. To meetings, as an example. Whatever it is, every single time you break that, it's like taking a piece of silver out your pocket. When that pocket is empty, you have broken trust with yourself, right? And so it's really important that we just imagine that everything we're doing is to maintain or keep adding silver in our pocket. That's really important. So when it comes to character, we need to do that even when nobody is watching. I really like what Steve Maraboli said. So many will fail not because they didn't set goals, but because they didn't set behaviors. Never, ever underestimate the compounding effect of consistent effort applied over time. And we spoke about compounding over here in the panel discussion. I heard that term coming up quite a lot. And yes, you know, most people don't understand the power of compounding when it comes to money. But I think a lot of people also don't acknowledge and appreciate the compounding effect of effort consistently applied over time. And that's going to come in how we set our behaviors. So that is reliability. Let's go on to capability, which is one of my favorite ones to talk about, because I'm really a big fan of intentional, deliberate growth. I'm talking about personal growth, but as we grow ourselves personally, we're going to grow everything around us, our relationships, our money, and everything that's going to help us have the future and to create the future that we want. So we have what's called a growth cycle. I mentioned that we need to learn, practice, and reflect. Most of us are stuck on the stage of just learning. You attend an event like this, you read a book, you watch a video, you even go to a live event, right? When they come back, which will hopefully be sooner than later, nice big events. But all of these things will give you awareness. Now, awareness is great. It's a good start. But being aware of something doesn't mean that tomorrow there's going to be change in your life. Change does not come from experience, and growth does not come from experience. Have you ever met somebody who says, I've got 10 years experience, but when you talk to them, it's like they've got 1 year of experience that's just been repeated 10 times? There's a difference, because the person who's got 10 years of experience, what they really have is evaluated experience. So change and growth doesn't come from experience, it comes from evaluated experience. We need to stop. We need to say, what have I learned? How do I apply it? And once we put it into action, we then say, right, let me reflect on it. What did I learn from applying it? Maybe things went the way that I predicted. Maybe it didn't. And so you learn and you adjust. And then once you've done that, you've learned, you practiced, you've reflected, then you go back to learning even more to build onto that, and you then practice and reflect. And through that cycle of learning, putting into practice, reflecting on it, and turning experience into evaluated experience, that's how we achieve growth. Now, here's the thing. You are imagining the future that you want. Remember, I said the best way to predict the future is to create it. Your motivation and sustaining your motivation to achieve that comes down to how much you believe you're on track to achieving that future that you want. And one of the things that makes us get distracted with distractions, I suppose, distracted with distractions, you know, things like excuses or distractions. What happens, what drives us towards that is uncertainty. Do you guys remember when COVID came out? We've spoken a lot about COVID here today. What was the first thing people did? Went out and panic bought, right? Toilet paper and food and everything. What were we trying to do subconsciously? What were most of the people doing that trying to do? It was, I'm so uncertain about the situation that's happening, but doing this makes me feel like I'm regaining control. And so that in itself was a way to try and regain certainty. Why were we scrolling and looking at the figures every minute? We were addicted, especially when the first wave came, because I can't control what's going on out there. But if I feel that I know where the numbers are at any given moment, then it gives me a sense of certainty. And so the same thing happens when we have a future that we're working towards. If we're not consistently growing ourselves to answer that question of self-capability, then we start becoming uncertain of whether we have the capability to actually achieve those goals, to be able to live that future. And that's when we then start looking for things that feel more certain, that feel more familiar. That's when we start procrastinating more. That's when we start giving credence to excuses more. So this is really important. Just to kind of summarize it, the difference between an event and a process: an event motivates you, a process will mature you. An event challenges you, like I'm challenging you here now, but a process will change you. An event will create awareness, but engaging in a process will create skills. And an event will encourage decisions, but a process will encourage development, actual growth and development in your life. So to sum up capability, take ownership of being the future you today. And you do that by planning and saying, who is the person who I need to be to have lived those goals? And if your goals are worthy, the person who you are at the end of achieving those goals, of being in that future, is a different version of yourself than the one watching this right now, because there's growth that needs to take place. Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, said, work with the sense of micro speed and macro patience. So get into action right now with developing that, but also have patience because growth does take time. And now finally, in the last few minutes, I want to share with you around self-care. And we hear self-care all the time, right? And a lot of people think that self-care means I'm going to go take myself for a piece of chocolate cake. That's not necessarily what self-care is. I really like this saying around self-care, which I've adjusted a little bit. True self-care is not salt baths and chocolate cake. It's making the choice to build a future you don't need to regularly escape from. Some of us feel like we need to regularly escape from our lives right now. What is going to change in your future if you're not going to make the changes that we're discussing over here and that has been discussed in today's event? We need to, if we want to change our future, we need to start changing what we do on a daily basis. And that includes how we think. And that's the inner game of influence. So when it comes to self-care, I want to just highlight in the short amount of time that I have here, just one thing for you that will change your life when it comes to self-care. Because how are you supposed to achieve the future you want to achieve if you got the biggest critic in your life sitting in your head telling you that you don't deserve it, that you can't do it, that there's every excuse coming up that can prevent you from living that dream, from living that future life that you want? And so what I want you to do right now in your head is to say the word hello, as if you're saying it to me, but don't say it out loud because the people around you will think that you're crazy for talking to a computer screen. So just in your mind, just say hello. I just want you to hear the voice in your head. Here we go, on 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, you heard that voice saying hello to you, right? Who was it saying hello to? See, here's the weird thing, right? If I clap my hands like this, you can hear that sound. But just because you can hear it doesn't mean that you are that sound. And it's the same with the voice in your head. Just because you can hear those thoughts doesn't mean you are those thoughts, doesn't mean you are that voice. This is important because not everything that voice says to you is going to be very caring, but not all of it is going to be accurate or true or realistic either. All of those fears that you have, all of that is going to impact you far less when you realize that a lot of those thoughts are not actually you. Your brain produces thoughts like a thought factory in the same way that your stomach produces enzymes. Do you think that you control your thoughts? Well, don't think of a pink elephant. You just thought of it, right? Now, in the same way that I triggered that thought in you, you're going to navigate your present, your future, the world around you, and there are things that are going to happen, like a pandemic, like other people who are in your life. They're going to say things, they're going to do things that's going to trigger certain thoughts that are out of your control, but that doesn't mean that the thoughts are true. And just because you can hear those thoughts doesn't mean that it's you. And so you can't be the same thing that you're observing at the same time. So just remember, when you hear that voice in your head coming with the criticism, the self-judgment, telling you that you can do something, you can't do something, having all of that self-judgment, that fear, that anxiety, that stress that it brings, just for a moment, become aware that if you are observing those thoughts, that you are not those thoughts. And therefore, you actually, as the observer of your thoughts, have the power to choose which ones you want to give focus to. And that's going to really, really help you when it comes to self-care. So break your chains of self-judgment. Know the value of your true potential, which is accessible when you transcend being the voice in your head. And I love what Brene Brown said here, that courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen. It takes an enormous amount of courage. We got to be brave to be able to confront ourselves and the voice in our head, and to really explore ourselves and practice that self-care. So this brings me to the end of what I wanted to teach you around the rapid influence formula. I hope that there's something here that you're able to start using that can make a difference in your life immediately as you think about the future that you want, as you future-proof yourself by demonstrating self-reliability, self-capability, and self-care so that you're equipping yourself to be able to reach that goal, that future that you want. Before I go, and this is the final thing that I'm going to share with you, I did mention that the experiment that we started, remember this one with the number 158, had the theme of subconscious influence. Remember, we had different words which created different numbers that we added up, that was divided, that was split, all these weird and wonderful things that got to 158. And I said to you that this was an experiment in subconscious influence. Now, I'm not only so happy that we actually had the words chosen that I wanted to be chosen, that we actually got to 158, but I also think to myself as a mentalist, how did we get to that? And I mentioned to you at the beginning that this had the theme of subconscious influence. In fact, when I showed you guys the envelope over here, I said to you that if the subconscious influence works, the results of the experiment will be inside the envelope. Remember when I showed this to you and we even had the ASI up on screen there? I kind of lied to you a little bit. It wasn't a lie, but I withheld something. I told you that the results of the experiment were inside the envelope. But actually, the results of the experiment were also on the envelope the entire time. And so when I told you to allow all manners of association to come to you, to influence you, we arrived at the number 158. And if we turn it around, if you haven't seen it yet, in fact, I'll do it on screen, you can see that 158 was in front of you the entire time. Isn't that absolutely madness? I can see people in the studio. Lesego has his hands up. Well, on that note, I just want to leave you with that final thought, to remember that there is always influence around us. There's always influence around you, but you get to decide how you control the influence that you bring into any given moment as you build the future and create the future that you want. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you, everybody. That's it from me. Goodbye. Thank you.
Wow, I'm actually so incredibly intrigued, Gillan. Right now, my brain is telling me that I really need to be playing these numbers. I think it's the winning thing. So I'm putting it out there into the universe that that's going to happen. Thank you so much. It was an incredible session for me. It was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you, Gillan. I'm certain we're all going to be practicing a lot of what we shared today. I'm sure you're going to be practicing a lot of what Gillan shared today. But before we end off, I'd like to welcome Duran Sayak, who will relay a message on behalf of our CBO, Mr. Anthony Govender, in closing.
Thank you, Feslin. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope that you've all enjoyed and derived much value from our Power of Knowing event today. Sadly, our Chief Visionary Officer, Anthony Govender, is at home recovering from COVID. However, he is watching this event live and wishes he could have been with us all in person today. I'm therefore honored to be able to deliver a brief but inspirational closing speech on behalf of Anthony. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would have loved nothing more than to have been here in person today to listen to our esteemed speakers share their professional and fascinating insights. Insights which will most certainly help us to take the first step towards equipping ourselves with the power of knowing, an event we're all incredibly proud to have conceptualized and hosted. Some of you may think that the future seems a little bleak. But remember, we are South Africans. We are a magnificently resilient nation. Each day brings with it its own set of challenges, and yet we manage to rise above, just as we have done time and time again. It was the great Winston Churchill who said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And that is precisely the attitude with which we hope you will march forward, armed with even more resources and tools. This is our gift to you. Like you, I have watched today's event from the comfort of my own internet connection, whilst I recuperate at home after falling seriously ill with COVID. Many of you have sadly lost loved ones as a result of this tragic pandemic. I'm immensely grateful to God to still be alive, and am incredibly blessed to now be on the highway to recovery. I urge you, regardless of your respective faith, to remain positive and to believe in the power of positivity and resilience. In honor of all of those who have sadly lost their lives due to COVID, I ask that you please take a moment of silence at some point today to remember them. Although today's event has certainly not been about promoting any of our products, ASI remains resolute in our quest to help South Africans build wealth and change lives. ASI exists to support our clients and partners and their employees. Now, more than ever, we need to retain employee benefits and help keep as many of our fellow men and women employed so that they may continue to support their families, both financially and emotionally. I know this is not an easy task, especially in our current climate, but when we think differently, we do differently. Last, but certainly not least, let's keep the conversation alive. Please reach out to us directly or follow us on social media. And perhaps, if you don't already, please do consider ASI as your partner of choice when it comes to health, wellness, insurance, investment, and retirement advisory. Together, let's continue to inspire everyone around us, including ourselves, so that we may build a lasting legacy and overcome uncertainty and adversity by using the power of knowing to catalyze positive and enduring change. God bless you all. Until we meet again, much love, Anthony. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please stay safe and continue to look after yourselves and your loved ones. Thank you, Fazlin.
Wow, that was incredibly heartfelt, Daron. I could actually feel Anthony's presence with us today. Anthony, we wish you a speedy recovery. Thank you for those moving words. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our time with you today. We are heartened that so many of you have chosen to join us and could take time of your busy days to actually come and spend it with us. So as soon as we can, please take the important conversation forward. And as soon as you can, in each of your respective organizations. Remember to click on the link below provided in the Q&A to claim your CPD points. Until we speak again, stay safe, stay empowered, and remain steadfast in your power of knowing.